Great. Thanks, Jenny. So my name is Katie Kabovchik. Like Jenny said, I work with Renewing the Countryside or with the Farmland Access Hub as a Farmland Access Navigator. I also do work with Big River Farms with their education program, just providing assistance to farmers in different areas, largely business planning. So like Jenny said, we talked about that last week. Um, and so tonight for this topic, finding and securing farmland. Um, so that initial step of looking for land is a big question that we get as land access navigators. It's it's such an exciting process to look for land, to really like envision your dream on property, just visiting different areas. And it also can be really discouraging. There's just it's hard. It's a hard situation. It's hard to find what you need to run your farm. Um, so we'll just talk through that a bit. But we always, as land access navigators, we do always let people know we don't search for land. Um, it's not one of the roles or areas of support we provide. We can connect you to resources. So we talk about where to look, and then also what to look for. And we just, figure out what is the most helpful support for you in that situation. So when it comes to looking for land, so working with a realtor is definitely a route to go and can be really helpful. But often what you're looking for is not readily available on the market. So these links that are posted here are really helpful, alternatives to finding land. Often land is listed here that is not listed on the market. So it's often people that when they're selling their farm, they would like to see it go to a beginning farmer. Um, they're willing to work with the incoming farmer more. So these websites, through MDA, Farmland Access Hub has one. There's a listserv that we also have to email people properties that we hear about within our group. The land stewardship, their clearinghouse, that's the one that I use a lot. One that is more used by a number of people, I would say. Marble Seed, they have a classifieds with land posted, and then a couple others as well. So these are good to get familiar with. This is just a photo of some of our land access navigators. This is our Minnesota group. We do have a couple more that are just finishing a training, and so they will be added soon. But we really try to meet people where they're at, with offering services in different languages. An area that we are hoping to address more is just being spread out around the state a little bit more. We're pretty centric in the Twin Cities right now, but a couple that we're bringing on are in different areas. So so we're kind of just trying to meet people where they're at, and be available in different areas to to speak to the land and communities in those areas. So one thing we usually start with is thinking about a search plan. So again, it's the traditional route of working with a realtor may bring up some great opportunities, but it can often not meet your needs as well. So what are other ways to get out there and to look for land? So depending on where people are located, what you're comfortable with, these are just suggestions of ideas to get familiar with what is out there. And I think I mentioned this last time, but we do, as part of the Farmland Access Hub, we have an engaging landowners working group, and because we recognize that there's a lot of farms that are owned by retiring farmers or farmers getting close to that age, and so what effort can we put into making these connections, to connecting those land seekers with the retiring farmers, and so that's a topic in a lot of people's minds, and so how are we working together to really address that? One of these, it's listed here, is the meet and greet events that have been organized, and hopefully more of those will be organized in different areas. The idea being that it's a place for landowners to come together and land seekers and talk about their different needs, in theory, make matches, but even if not that, just to try to understand the other side of this equation as we try to make matches. But really word of mouth. So, if you're looking for land, um, just bringing it up as often as possible in conversations. If you're attending, workshops and conferences with other farmers, just really putting the word out what you're looking for. Some people have had success with flyers, especially if you know what your area that you're looking for. Going to that space and finding businesses that the community goes to. Other people have had success with letters, targeting again like a certain area. So yeah, it can take work. It can definitely take a fair amount of work to do that land search, and it can take time too. So just something, just to be realistic about and set your expectations, that this is a process. So part of that process is really knowing what you're looking for, um, and uh, and having that kind of ready to go as you're looking at these properties, so what's going to really help you succeed with your farming. So a couple different categories to think about. So you have a farm business that you're going to be running on this land. So soil type and quality are very important. Um, the web soil survey is a great tool that I use a lot. I use it before, if someone's going to look at a property and go visit. I think checking it out on the web soil survey ahead of time gives you some information. There it is. So this is, hosted by the USDA. It's a pretty amazing tool that the whole country has been mapped with its soil type, and there's quite a bit of information. So you click on start and you create an area of interest for a specific property. You can search by address. There's different ways to search, and you can get a lot of information around a lot of the things that you can't change, so the soil type, the soil structure, thinking about the water level. Is drought going to be a problem? Is flooding going to be a problem? So it has, some crop productivity indexes. So quite a bit of information there. Depending on what type of farming you're doing, some of it more useful than others. But I think there's like a tutorial when you kind of go to check that out that can help you navigate how to use that. Thinking about climate, like even if you're staying within Minnesota, just how much it can change if you go south of the cities versus north. You're really, depending on how far north you go, thinking about how that might reduce your growing days. Farming infrastructure. So, especially if you're doing specialty crops or livestock, there's more that you need than just the land. And so really thinking about what that is going to cost on top of the land purchase. Like especially if you're buying raw land, what is it going to take to put a well in? And so some of these are, they can really vary in cost. But as much as you can think about that ahead of time, can be really helpful. So then, the other piece that can be really important to investigate ahead of time is just the zoning and building restrictions. That comes up frequently after people purchase that there are restrictions in place that they didn't know existed. So that can take some investigating. It's not always written out or listed on the property listing. Again, some of these other transitions where you maybe know the owners, or get a chance to talk with them, that can be really helpful for figuring some of these things out. A property doesn't have to be zoned agriculture. You can, you can farm in residentially zoned areas, but you might have some more challenges. You might have to apply for variances. You might have to investigate or just advocate for your farm to exist in that space. So just knowing that ahead of time can be important with where you're looking. Mhm. Um, Personally, thinking about those community aspects. So, thinking about a rural community, if that's where you're looking, what are the schools like? How is this, how does it change the community that you're used to or currently living in? Um, some of these things can be harder to answer if you're not, familiar with where the community that land is in. Um, so again, if possible, speaking with the landowners, the current landowners can be helpful. Um, whatever ways you can investigate to get more information on what it would be like to live on that property. We've created this evaluation checklist that can help walk you through some of these topics. It's set up, as something you would ask the owners of a property. So it's just a list of things that you can check in with them about. Set up so you can take notes if you're visiting multiple properties. Um, so just all sorts of things to think through with the land, um, location, climate, zoning restrictions, some of the questions to ask. Um, so Jenny's already put this on the MDA webpage. Um, I'm sure there's things missing, but enough to kind of get you thinking about some of those questions and things to figure out. Another worksheet we use a lot in a land search process is this necessary, desirable, optional worksheets. Um, Land for Good is an organization on the East Coast that does a lot of work around land access. They have a lot of resources on their website. It's a good place to explore. Um, this is basic, but it can be really helpful in prioritizing since no property is going to be perfect. I mean, that is a chance, I guess, but most likely it's not going to be. So thinking about what are the essential pieces that you need to have to run your farm. So what's necessary? What are those things that you would like, but could make do without? And then the optional, so lower on that priority scale, but still things you would love to see. Um, so it just has some categories to think through, especially if you're, buying land with someone else, with a partner, with your family. Um, to make sure you're on the same page as to what your priorities are. This is a good activity to do together. It's also great to show if you're working with a realtor or someone else that's helping you in the search. That can be a really helpful tool. So a lot of the challenges I'm sure you're aware of if you've been looking for land, but I just thought I would mention some here. So you're not alone in some of those things. Really number one is finding something affordable. Um, Prices are always going up and it gets harder to, be able to afford what you need to operate your business. And also, again, thinking through, it's not just the land, but it's also, what else you need, the infrastructure, um, to run your business. So yeah, on those lines, understanding what those investment costs are. So really doing your homework as best you can. Um, but not knowing if that well is going to cost 15,000 or 50,000. um, that's a real challenge to be able to project how you're going to afford that. um, Another real challenge is finding sellers that are willing to work with the needs of beginning farmers. So again, if you're looking on the market, it's one hard to it's a unique situation that most beginning farmers are looking for. Um, but then, there's challenges with the timing of it. If something is on the market, chances are, that seller is ready to sell. And, currently, they probably can sell it fairly quickly. So if your only loan option is an FSA loan, or that's the route you're going, the timing of that loan, we spoke a little bit about that last week, that's you know, a 2 to 6 month process. Um, so, and the way it works, was mentioned also, you don't get a purchase agreement up. You don't get a pre-approval, and you have a purchase agreement that is part of your application. So for the seller, they're taking their house, their property off the market when that purchase agreement is signed, and then your application is going in, and then that process starts. So the seller is taking it off without any guarantee that you will get the loan. So getting a seller to be on board if they're not already wanting to transition to a beginning farmer, um, that can be challenging. Um, there's the beginning farmer tax credit through MDA that Jenny mentioned before. So that has potential advantages for the land seeker, but again, we're getting the seller on board to be able to apply for that and benefit from it can take some convincing. And then just one other thing that I put on there that can be a challenge is, especially this is more often with a farm service agency loan that I've seen this come up, is that it has to be appraised at the loan value or higher. So if you agree on a price for a certain amount for 400,000 and then the property appraises at 350, you can only get the loan for 350. So you'd have to renegotiate with the sellers to make that loan go through. So I think that could potentially come up with other loans too, but that can sometimes be a challenge to just kind of work through. And yeah, so then just a bit about securing the property. So one day, hopefully, you will find that dream farm, that farm that's going to work with what you want to do. You want to make sure you're ready to move forward on that. So have your finances planned out before you start your land search, because it's disappointing. It's really disappointing if you find that place and then aren't able to connect all the pieces to make the financing happen quick enough. So having that plan in place ahead of time, you might not have a pre-approval. If you're working with a bank, you might get that. If you're working, with FSA, you won't have that. So you might not be in that position, but as long as what you need to do, you've started that conversation, you're working on the application, and getting things all put together before you start looking. Another thing I just want to mention is that in that process of securing land, know that you can sign a purchase agreement before you've done all the investigating. So if you want to go through that checklist, that evaluation list, some of those things you can ask upfront right away. Some will take a little bit of time to do, and so often you do those, like especially if there's testing involved, after you've signed the purchase agreement. So know that doesn't need to hold up the process. You just put all those things as contingencies in the agreement, and then you can do your investigating and testing after that is signed. And then just a couple, legal considerations. If you're working with a lawyer, if you're working with a realtor, when it comes to signing the purchase agreement, they're going to advocate for you and review that, and it's pretty standard, your purchase agreement. But if you are not working with a realtor, or if it's only the seller's realtor, then it would be advisable to have someone look over that on your behalf. If you're working with a navigator, we have attorneys that we can pull in to review that at no cost to you. Just to double check. A navigator can also go through that with you to make sure that all the contingencies are there, just some of those details. If you end up doing some type of alternative agreement, like a contract for deed, or owner financing, then it would definitely be recommended to have an attorney work with you on creating that agreement, or at least reviewing it before you sign it. As you just want to make sure that you understand the situation, and that there's things in place to protect you as the land seeker, as the buyer. But I think that's all I have. to say on that. Well, yeah, turn it back to Jenny.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. I think that overview is really helpful. I just want to reiterate that Katie is one of these navigators in Minnesota. This is a free service that's available from the Farmland Access Hub, farmlandaccesshub.org. They're our partners in this webinar series, providing resources to farmers. We work closely with them, and it's a group of several nonprofits who partner to get these resources out. But both mine and Katie's contact information is up here. So feel free to reach out to us if you have additional questions. The recording of this, as well as the links we've mentioned, are available on the web page for the down payment assistance grant, so you can find those worksheets there, and the worksheets from previous nights. But next we're going to, unless anyone has a quick question now, we're going to move into our panel. We've got a few farmers here tonight. You may have seen Vincent running around the farm. It looks like the other two are relaxing in the AC maybe now, but I'd like to welcome all of you guys. And we can just start with a brief introduction. We're going to have them introduce themselves and then ask a few questions about how this farm search process worked for them and any additional resources that they want to share. So Vincent, if you'd like to go first and just introduce yourself and what kind of farm you have or hope to have.
All right. My name is Vincent. I'm currently about to be a farm owner officially in Northfield. I have 9 acres. That's what I'm in the process of purchasing, and we grow mostly organic vegetable. Farm. So we do vegetables and we grow them, organic. And I've been working with Katie for, I think, a year now. So it's been a long process, but we are glad it's almost over. But yeah, so we are currently in Northfield. That's where I am.
Great. Thank you. Kelsey, again, if you'd just be willing to introduce yourself and share a little about what kind of farm you have, where you are.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name's Kelsey Zavedra. I'm in Chisago County, so an hour north of the metro. I have a 5-acre farm where I grow specialty crops. I focus on heirloom varieties and saving seed. And then I've also grown I raised pastured chicken for meat, but I'm taking a little break of that this year. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. Did I answer all the questions?
For now, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
But I will add that Kelsey is a member of the MDA's Emerging Farmer Working Group. So thank you. It's a group of farmers who help us with advise us on different policies and programs and all kinds of stuff. So, and then our last farmer tonight, you might recognize as our very own MDA staffer, Anthony Adams. Do you want to say hello and a brief introduction?
Hi, everyone. Yes, I am Anthony Adams, the Outreach and Engagement Coordinator for the Emerging Farmers Office. And I am also a farmer a landowner as of September 2023. So I'm really excited to be here and kind of share my experience with you all.
And then for the next question, Anthony, I'll just start with you since you're here. Can you talk about how you found your farm? So what did you use any of these listings or what was that? What did you do?
I am going to try to share my screen a little bit here. Let's see. Here, share. And there you go. So hopefully you guys can see the
Yep.
screen. So this is kind of where I started out. Actually, where I started out was just kind of reaching out to a variety of our members already listed, our partners already listed. And this is which Katie kind of mentioned. This is our FarmLink, Minnesota Department of Ag's FarmLink. So this is actually my wife and I's profile on there. And so I would encourage anyone that is watching this or is considering looking for land, the more you expose yourself to being out there and looking for land and letting everybody know that you're looking for land, there is a strong possibility of you finding that. So I started out with this. I have also reached out to the connectors as well. Great program for you to do. And then from there, I kind of sort of just went the route of a realtor. And I also connected with some of the borrowers, such as USDA and Compare, to name a few. There's quite a bit more out there, and just kind of let them know, hey, you know, I am in your area and I'm looking for such and such and such. So if you have any current clients that are looking to leave the business, please let me know. I'll, feel free to share my contact. Again, the more you expose yourself, the greater opportunities may come your way. There are a couple of different other sites that I like to point out too. So the Minnesota Department of Transportation actually has a list of properties that they often put up for bids. And this site I'll share with you guys in the link so that Jenny can basically be able to share it with you later on. So it's not only the Minnesota Department of Transportation, but there's also the Department of Natural Resources and Department of Administration that also has a variety of sales. Again, just kind of looking at conventional routes. We worked with a realtor, non-conventional routes, looking at sales by the government. And from there, we kind of sort of found a property that we were interested in. And something that was already spoke about is understanding like the value of that land. Soils, as we're going to be farming, I want to know what's happening in that area. And kind of as a case study, so this is our farm, kind of giving you an example of what I went through. So not only finding the place that I want to buy, but understanding like, okay, what am I buying? Is this worth what I think it is? And am I going to be able to successfully like grow what I want to grow? So this is an example of my farm here. And you can see the different soil types. I hope you can see it. So this one is listed as, let's go here, C4A. And this is that site. It's very interactive. If you have any problems, feel free to reach out to your local NRCS. And you can actually scroll down, scrolling really fast for C4A. And it kind of sort of gives you an example of what that soil type is. And you can take that soil type and Google it. I Googled another type that I had. And here's a site from UC that kind of sort of breaks down the soil. It's important to know, like, for example, my wife and I wants to grow, we're in a process of doing an orchard. So blueberry orchard, we need to know that the soil acidity is important, drainage, kind of sort of the makeup and composition of the soil. So I know Katie mentioned it, I'm mentioning it again. So hopefully somebody else will mention it. So 3 times is a must, I guess. But very much something that we were vested in, and also knowing not only just like what the soil is and actually testing the soil. So the University of Minnesota has a soil testing lab. I believe it's probably about $21 for soil samples. But not only do you get your soil tested, but you can also tell them what you're hoping to plant in that area. And they'll provide you a brief synopsis of how you can remediate the soil, or if it's not ideal, or if it is in fact ideal. So I'm kind of all over the place, but I wanted to make sure that you guys are given a variety of different tools. A lot of the counties, for instance, this is a map on Stearns County. A lot of the counties have maps that provide an aerial view of all the lands within that county. And so if you find someplace like I'm driving, so part of what I did was actually my wife and I spent a couple of weekends where we just drove around the counties that we were really interested in looking. And we looked for some farms that looked like they were kind of abandoned. Or if we saw a for sale sign somewhere, we would note that and then go back home. And we would pull up that county that we were in and we would Google county maps. So for example, this is Stearns County. The one site that we did end up using was Beacon. This is kind of sort of the name of it. You can select by state, then by county. Not every single county is here. That's why I suggested Googling it first. But once you get to your county, you could put in your address. And this is my actual farm here on Beacon site. So again, kind of sort of highlighting, I'm able to find the different soil types. And one of the cool things that I took note of due to all the issues that we've been having with climate change, like last year was really drought year, and this year was a really wet year, was understanding like, well, what type of, I guess, kind of areas do I have on the farm? So here I have some highland mature forests. I have a variety of fields that are already established. And this information here tells me that there's a wetland. And knowing where the water will end up or may end up will be important to know if that land is actually usable. So a lot of lands, when the season starts to get flooded, a lot of lands goes for lower price, I've observed, but you aren't aware why they're going for such price, except if you did your own research. So you don't necessarily have to go the Beacon route. I found a quick cheat here. So this is realtor.com. This is again our property. And when you go to maps, there's actually little features like this that you can turn on. And it's not as detailed as Beacon, but it gives you a general idea of, oh, look, there's a wetland in this general area. So I might not be able to get, to use that land for my work, but for the rest of the property, I have kind of sort of a full gamut of use. So really quickly, I'm sorry for speaking really fast. I just want to make sure that everybody else have a chance to kind of sort of showcase what, however else they found their property. So let me know if you have any questions. And this is an example of kind of sort of a site that you would get from the Minnesota Department of Transportation. And I selected this one because it's reasonably priced, just to show that there are opportunities that could fall into the realm of, financially feasible, especially with the $15,000 down payment program, if you did in fact get it. But it's always left up to you to do research. If this doesn't show you anything, I want to stress research. And hopefully somebody's going to talk about zoning here. So that's all I have. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I hope it wasn't too much.
Thank you, Anthony. I think those online resources are going to be really helpful, especially for this round of grants. We know, just as a reminder, not going to get into too many details, but the applications will be approved and awarded in probably early October, and then you've got 6 months to close. So most of that time window is over the winter. So it'll be great to have access to some of these resources, to take a look at the soil content and, wet areas and things like that. Anthony, I also put your info in the chat because, again, Anthony is a MDA staff here and happy to help with this kind of stuff. So thank you. I guess we'll go back to Kelsey. How did you find your land? Did you use one of these online directories, or what was that process?
It took me 6 years to find land when I first started looking, and I kept looking at all of the online resources, whether it was like with the MLS, the Minnesota Listing Service. So all the realty services, like I had a realtor, when Anthony was talking about how he and his wife drove around, like I also drove around. I drove around to like the ideal area that I wanted to be, because most of the farmland that changes hands never goes onto the market. And so I really wanted to be in a specific area. So I just would drive around that area looking for, handwritten signs that said for sale, or talking to people in the community to know if someone might be selling soon. I even looked at, there was an old house that was only on like 3 acres, but it was next to a 100-acre field. And so I'm like that person who will, like, if you're outside, I'll just pop in and talk to you and say, hi, like, my name's Kelsey. I'm looking for land in the area. Like, would you be willing to sell 5 acres? So I had lots of those conversations with people, wrote letters, like tried to just make myself accessible and just let people know what I was doing. And in the end, none of that worked. At the time, this was like over 10 years ago, FarmLink was not really a resource. Um, so it was just a lot of word of mouth, but I eventually just expanded my search area. I really wanted to be in Washington County, close to my family. I wanted to be closer to the metro because I knew that's where my market would be. Um, but I ended up being 1 hour from the Twin Cities in Chisago County and the other end of the St. Croix River Valley than where I really wanted to be. But it was just year after year after year of me like waiting and waiting and waiting and thinking, oh, I'll just save money. And really, I was just sick of waiting because at the end of the day, I was like, I'm not getting any younger, and this isn't particularly like easy work. So I settled on a smaller parcel of land, and came into vegetable production. I really wanted to do beef production, so that requires a lot more land, but I wasn't born into that. So I just didn't have the same you know, social network and resources in order to, and like financial resources to get into that. So with specialty crops, particularly vegetables, like you can turn a profit in 1 year. So that was just kind of what I did. And I bought 5 acres of raw land in a community I didn't know anything about. And I didn't know anyone in the area, but I knew that I needed to be within 1 hour of the Twin Cities because that was my market to know that whatever I grew, I would be able to drive to the cities and sell it, whether that was like with you know, direct to consumer for markets or selling CSA model or wholesale and things like that. So I think you just have to know your non-negotiables of and for me it was distance and time, that I was going to be on the road. Um, yeah, and I bought raw land. So and I did all of the research as well. The USDA soil maps are so important, especially when you're in an area you like don't know anything about. So I spent quite a bit of time on that. And I had, you know, prime farmland, they called it. It's ironically terrible soil, but like if you add enough compost, it works out. But yeah, so again, the land was cheap, all things considering, but there's no infrastructure. So, you know, I had to have a well drilled. I chose to be off grid. So I had to get a special solar well pump. I had a high tunnel that I got on a CRIP grant. So I was able to put that up. But I had to install fencing. Like farmers need land and we need water and we need fencing. Um, you know, I started very bare bones. You know, you spend so much time looking for things that it's hard to invest in your farm business without land. So that was kind of like my biggest barrier was once I get land, I can grow perennials, or I can invest in fencing, or I can invest in, you know, equipment, whether that's like a nicer mower or I have BCS tractor. So things like that. And some of the things you don't really know what you need until you're in that space. So and how your system operates and things like that. So yeah, I had to install fencing, irrigation, some solar panels for electricity. 2 weeks ago, I got power on the farm, tied into the grid now. Yeah, that was a huge change. Yeah, but I have a farm shop on the farm where people can come and purchase things. And that was the decision there was we need to have better infrastructure like electricity to for cold storage. So I don't did I answer everything?
No, that's great.
Okay.
That's helpful.
Okay.
6 years is a long time. We commend you for that. I bet it's a lot. Vincent, to you now. I know you shared you've been working with Katie, the Farmland Access Navigator here. Did you also use like a realtor, or where did you look for your 9 acre, or how did you find that? And
So,
before I'm just going to interrupt quick to say I'm going to put the intake form in the chat right now. This is if you are interested in working with a navigator. Again, it's a free service, one-on-one support. You can fill out their form, their intake form. But Vincent, what was that process like, or how have you found land? Where have you looked?
so I mean, a similar thing. I mean, mine sounds a little simpler. Hearing Anthony's and the other one. Um, but yeah, so I drove to. I knew of the Kenyan community. There's a lot of farmers, so I knew where they were kind of leasing land to farm. So I went to the owner who was leasing to them, and I just approached him and I told him, what I was looking for, and then he I actually wanted to lease from him initially, but then he told me, he gave me a number and he told me reach out to there's a lady, there's one of the ladies he told me to reach out to who ended up actually connecting me to Katie. Now, when I wrote an email to the lady and then she told me reach out to Katie, then no, actually Katie's the one who reached out to me. I don't remember what it was. But then Katie now sent me the three links, where farmers usually post, maybe if they're leasing land or land farms to purchase. So I went to one of those sites and I was just looking through what has been posted, and I saw someone who had, like something similar to what I wanted. It was 9 acre, but then he was saying, that like that was for people, maybe it had a lot of trees, but then I just thought, you know what, it doesn't have to just call him and ask him, about more about the land. So I called him and then he he told me what he had listed there was not wouldn't be ideal for my vegetable farm. But then he told me, then he asked me more questions about what I wanted to use the land for. Then when I explained it to him, he said, call me after 2 months. I have another property that might be suitable for what you're looking to do. And I've not decided if I'll sell it yet, but just call me. I'll call you after 2 months, and I'll let you know what I decide. So I mean, I just patiently waited, and we tried looking. Still kept looking at other farms, working with a realtor. But then after 2 months, I mean, I reached out, and he was still kind of trying to decide. So it took a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot after hearing this. People who've been having 6 years experience, but it took a lot of, just a little bit of waiting. But then he finally decided to just, allow us to even come and see the property. And then from there, it's been just us communicating with him, and that was it. That's how I ended up finding it. Yeah, but
That's
what I'll agree with the other two is for sure you have to get out of your comfort zone, drive, call. It doesn't hurt to just go a little bit over and above to just find it.
Yeah, thank you. I know like we do share all these online resources, but what I'm hearing from everyone is that driving around and word of mouth is the way to go.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess another question maybe for Katie, or if anyone else wants to weigh in. We had one in the chat from Carrie who was asking, do you know much about anyone who's been successful, like working with a landowner who's willing to subdivide or sell like a smaller parcel when they own like a large one?
I have not had experience with that. Sometimes it can be tricky with just like the zoning or restrictions around limiting how much land you can split off from a larger section. But maybe Anthony, yeah, Kelsey
Yeah,
has more.
yeah. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yes. One of my neighbors actually recently did that. He subdivided his property for sale for another person that was looking to purchase it. I would say that yes, understanding, well, first and foremost, reaching out and having that communication, like Vincent did with the farmer, and then figuring out what the rules and regulations. Each county has a kind of a limited amount of how big a parcel can be. And so sometimes it might be a few acres, sometimes it may be a specific footprint. But yes, it is something that's feasible, but it will take a little bit more of a little bit more legroom, and I think it will be advantageous to you as the farmer that are seeking land to kind of sort of do some of that legwork for the farmer, just because farmers tend to be super busy. And so understanding what the county zoning laws are, understanding what the process will take, surveying, making sure you have a survey company lined up and a title company as well. Those are some of the, at least a few things that I'm aware of that needs to be in place in order for you to kind of sort of divide any part of your land.
Thank you. Kelsey, do you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to say that just because it is possible, like what Anthony just said, it's like it's all possible. But there are social dynamics within families when it comes to dividing land, because the average age of a farmer is 59, and a lot of people don't want to farm. And so, but they are, families leave farmland for their families. So it could be a very sensitive subject if you're going to someone and saying, can I just buy a few acres? Because you're essentially like taking a piece of land away from like someone's piece of the pie. And like that can be, although it may be legally possible to do something like that, like it might be taking someone's inheritance away more or less. And that could be, why you're met with like a hard no, because it's not one person's decision. It might be like an entire family, and they have to like bring in their family members, their brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles to be able to make this decision, because it may be held in a trust. So, but you can see who owns land as there's plat maps that are public information. But I had no success in that, and I think that's probably why. So just wanted to share that.
Cool. Thank you. Another question, Vincent, if you could talk a little bit more about, like, not to put you on the spot in front of her, hopefully you have good things to say, but what was that process like working with Katie, and like what kind of things did she help you with?
Wow, there's a lot to say about it, but one is one thing I realize is farmers are very attached to their land. That is something that, unlike when people sell their homes, they're like they live in there. Then when it's time to sell it, it's like they're just ready to detach from it, and it's usually easy to just buy houses and hand over houses. But I realize with land, and especially farmland and farms, it's really something that is difficult. And that being said, like even after I reached out to Ed, and he told me, call me to after 2 months, and he said he's willing to sell it. I appreciate that I came with Katie, because during the first meeting, like he just kept talking about, this land, how, of course, the good things about it, how he's so attached to it, and all these things. And, for me listening, I was just like, okay, I'm just ready to buy. But having someone like Katie, who, at least was there, they could talk, and I guess they could connect and talk about they even ended up talking about the property across the street. But I feel like it was a good start to my relationship with the seller. So Katie, like their conversation, they connected, they could talk about nature. I mean, I didn't understand a lot of what he was trying to say, especially like forestry stuff. But just having someone who understands a thing or two about just farms, about just how people are just attached there to their farms. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it made it way like it was easy for me to just step back and hey, let Katie do the talking, and that now softened his heart a little bit to even consider me as opposed to someone else who just came to him and told him, you know, I just want to buy your land. You know, so that was the first thing. And interestingly, the other interesting thing is, you know, after that, you know, like he never communicated to me. Like the whole conversation, you know, I would talk to Katie. Sometimes he would actually not respond to me, but he would respond to Katie. And you know, then Katie would give me the feedback. So like Katie just became that middle person, you know. Like I would say my lawyer, my realtor, the one who's on my side, like Katie just did it all. So it made things. We found a realtor, but then I realized even these realtors, the properties that they show you, you know, there's few farms we visited, and I thought the farms were okay, and I told Katie, hey, you know, me and the, you know, I went with the realtor and we saw uh 2 or 3 farms, and then when Katie told me, can I check them out? Then I forwarded them to Katie. But then Katie told me, you know what? FSA wouldn't approve those farms. And I was like, why? Because a lot of the value of that property is in the house and not the land. And so that was another thing, you know. So even realtors, sometimes you can get realtors, but then they also don't know what, you know, what FSA or department, you know, like Department of Agriculture, they would approve for loans for certain farms. So I realized, okay, you know what? It doesn't even my realtor was not helping in that case. So just I felt like just having Katie by my side, it helped me so much because she knew everything. And when it comes to the whole process with the purchase agreement, even just putting the financial records together, she could send me a template, then I work on them, and then I forward, you know, I send them back to her. Then she'd look at it and she'd tell me, okay, you need to change a thing, you know, this or that. And trust me, to this date, we feel like, okay, Katie, I think we should be paying you for all these things that you're doing to us. To us, it was too much. I can email her, I can call her anytime, you know. I wouldn't, I can't just say enough of how crucial it is to always just work with land access navigators. You know, my family and I owe Katie a lot, you know, and we are just grateful that we have people like that.
Yeah.
That's just
Thank
the
you.
summary. There's more
Yeah.
details, but that's just the summary.
Well, I'm glad we were recording. Katie, you should put this on your website. That was quite a testimonial. But I'm glad that has been so helpful, you know, going to those meetings, helping you with banking stuff, all that kind of stuff. Um, you know, we're getting about to the end of our session here. So, you know, if you would like to stick around, have a few more questions, I can stick around. Anyone else who's available. Otherwise, I'd like to just invite our farmers here. If you have any additional advice for a first-time land seeker or other experiences and resources you'd like to share. Kelsey, we can start with you. Do you have any final thoughts or advice or resources you'd like to share?
Um, I always tell people like when they say they want to farm, but they're gonna stop and they're gonna save up and before they search, and I'm like, don't just go after it. Start your process and just it takes well for me it took a lot longer than I thought it would, and I just wish that I would have been more seriously proactive about it from the beginning because I would have had land sooner. But yeah. So I would just say start as soon as you can and like expand your horizons because I never thought I'd be where I'm at on the acreage that I'm at, but you know, it's just you have to get there somehow. So Don't wait around, just chase after it and things work out.
Thank you. I would echo that, especially if you want to use this grant program. I'd encourage you to get started as soon as possible because can be a long journey, as you've heard tonight. Anthony, do you have any last words you'd like to share for a first-time land seeker or?
Yes. I just put in the chat a link to our emerging farmers resource page. MDA has a variety of different resources alongside grants. So even if you are not necessarily getting land, but you are farming, I would highly suggest that you check some of those resources out. As it relates to kind of sort of finding land and going along this journey of being a farmer or becoming a landowner, I would say it takes some level of effort and some level of like, this is what I want to achieve your goal. And so, as Vincent pointed out, pointed out that you kind of have to think outside of the box. You kind of have to kind of come out of your comfort zone and be creative. You, by nature, it is my opinion, and farmers are very creative. It takes a lot to grow something, and it takes a lot to do that well. And so, I would definitely suggest kind of following the conventional wisdom, connectors, realtors, but also like use your network. Kind of go on little road trips, dream big. Vision boards are something that, whether or not you agree with them, helps you to focus and helps you to keep your goal in mind. If that's a list or that's a picture, that has helped me in my journey to becoming a farmer. So if there's anything that I can do to help you in the capacity as the outreach and engagement coordinator, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would welcome that as well. So best of luck.
Cool. Thank you. And Vincent, do you have any last words or resources that you'd like to share to other first-time land seekers?
Yes. I had one advantage I had. I have some business background, and to be honest, I was not expecting to even buy a land this soon. But one thing that helped me, like in business, how people say there are people who have skills and running a business. Those are two totally different things. And they're the same thing, even with farming, especially in the Kenyan community, those who surround me, you find people who, yes, they have the skill of farming. But then when it comes to now running and thinking of it as a business, that's where most of them, lack. And for you to really take advantage of all these programs and all these grants and all these things that are there for your help, you need to now think now as a business. And you can, and people can just start small scale, like just figure out how can I measure all these things that I do, like how many plants did I plant, or what size of farm do I even have? Those are the small basics which, if you just keep track of them, by the time when an opportunity comes, that's not when you're trying to figure out how many, like what size beds do I have, like how many plants, how many crops did I plant. So I think for sure that I can't emphasize enough, like how people now, yes, you having the skill is good. That's great. And people, yes, you can have years of experience of that. But now just transition your mind to now think of farming as a business too. Take it a little more serious. And then now you can set yourself up to get the benefits and all these grants and all these opportunities that are out there available for farmers. So that would be my key emphasis.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you for reiterating the importance of record keeping and all that goes into to these endeavors.